Hey, friends, welcome back to Shift Happens. My name is Joe Smith. I'm your host and the lead pastor of an open and affirming church called Shift here in Gainesville, Florida. And today is 50 episodes in, 50 episodes of stories and sharing and tears and joy and all the things. And so I thought, you know what? I want to mark this with a special guest. And I have invited my dear friend, Brent Roberts, to be back, who was episode number one. And by the way, still has the most downloads of all of the stories. So
Ooh.
I know it. So you've got all kinds of, yeah. So if nothing else happens the rest of your life, you've got that.
And I'm 50. Wow.
Oh,
Awesome.
that
Episodes.
yeah.
Like, you need to know that is incredibly impressive uh, as a podcast host to
Thanks.
all of the interviews, all the time to edit, put them up. It is work to make this stuff happen. So well done.
Yeah, well, thanks. We have fun. We had a lot of fun. And you know what? Honestly, one of the best things about this has been able is being able to connect with people that I would have, for the most part, just never connected with. Just so many, I have met so many beautiful human beings and just had, I don't know. I mean, it is the utmost privilege to have, to be able to, you know what I mean? I know you know what I'm talking about, to share their story and then to just bare their souls. It's just,
It's this tremendous honor to sit in a chair asking questions that unfold people before your eyes, and then not just you but an entire audience maybe across the world, that people can and will get so vulnerable and transparent to share the intricacies and details of who they are, what they've been through, what has torn them in shreds as a human being, and then also what's rebuilt them. It is really remarkable.
yeah, people are amazing. People are amazing. And so so to everybody that has shared, I just want to say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this. And Brent, I wanted to mark this by reaching back out to you because you were the first story that was told and kind of helped kick this thing off. And you were the first person that we called when we relaunched Shift and turned it into what it is. And you were on that original board of directors. You were the first one to sign on. And so, you know, you've played a part in our story, recently, pretty big part, but, our part of our life story. I mean, I'll link that first episode in. So if people haven't heard it yet, they can listen to it. But, we go back to our days at, Fundamentalist Bible College down in Southern Missouri.
It seems like forever ago, and it's nuts to think we're, oh god, we're middle-aged men at this point. there's no there's no skirting around that. We are middle-aged men.
I know.
um and when I arrived to Bible college in the armpit of America in Missouri, that baby's right in the center. I was 17. Like, it's nuts to think we were that young, starting, and to look around at 17-year-olds these days, to like, my God, they're so little. They're so young. And to feel so almost adult that
Uh-huh.
in our minds, to be pursuing the degrees we were there and all the studies, just nuts that that's when we met each other.
I know. It is crazy to think
Even
about.
listen to the troubling facet as well. Like, I don't miss the Midwest per se, but there is not a Sonic within like 10 miles of me. And there for sure isn't a Waffle House. It is heartbreaking to be living in an incredible city like LA. We have incredible food, by the way, but no Sonic for some tots and some cherry ocean water slush, or a Waffle House.
That's so funny. I literally had Sonic tater tots the other day.
Give me your tots.
They were so good. Um, yeah, so we wanted to kind of mark this, and normally, if you've listened, you know that we go through people's stories and just kind of talk about it. But Brent has already shared his story, so I reached out to Brent and just said, "Hey, I would love to like talk forward instead of talking backward, and I would love to talk about." um, queer joy and all of the things that you have learned because you've gone from that, side X of like this is a sin and I'm compartmentalizing this to struggling through all of that and then coming out where you are now. Um, it has been, just from the outside observing a lifelong journey, a lifelong struggle. But I will say in the many years since you have just really embraced who you are, who God made you to be, um, you have just lived very, very well, just beautifully. And I would love to just dive into that, what that looks like, what that means to you. Oh, what was it that, shifted in you that was like, no, 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 this is who I am. And then how did you embrace that and how did you move forward in that?
Right. Um, well, I think there's so many things to unpack with it because with embracing the newness means letting go of the oldness.
Mm,
Uh, uh, there's a sense of a burial. There's a sense of a grieving of who I used to be, and I think people who finally um, come out or step into the newness of who they are, of who they've been masking, hiding, and just the raw honesty of it, and sometimes the simplicity of it, of like, I think I'm just more attracted to guys than I am girls. The end. Or, and sometimes when parents have watched their child grow up for so long and so many years, go to college and come back and finally have the conversation, the whole family sitting on the couch, like, Mom, Dad, everybody, and they're like, we know, for crying out loud, we've known for, but giving the patience and grace for someone they know and love to find the courage to say those words because they're afraid of the rejection once they speak them. They're afraid of the difference and the post effects of letting that out, letting that be known, and what will that shift and morph. And it's so beautiful when families are like, it's no big whoop. It is what it is. To watch some various shows like Heartstopper that are now on television, where the mom, she just when he tells her in the kitchen and she just embraces him and loves on him. There's so many sweet moments in television these days that give such beautiful depictions of how to do it well and for people who went through traumatic and awful coming out experiences and rejection from family members that led to some severe heartbreak and depression. It's so wonderful to see movies and stories showing beautiful reflections
mm.
of people making these steps that we all just sit back and applaud, and getting to see like a prom or a young love that so many LGBTQ people may have felt they missed out on. Um, I don't know, like you said, it's a lifelong thing, much like it is for anybody. For
Yeah.
you, look at the transformation you've done to go from um, just years steeped in Christian evangelical ministry, knowing so surely all the things you did, and same with me. Of Bible said it, I believe it, amen.
Yeah.
Enough said. Um, it's it's not just the saying, "Oh, I'm gay." It's okay. What does that do with my relationship with God? What does that do with the relationship with so many other things? With my relationship with my sexual identity and orientation. Um, it informs some other things. Um, Not all encapsulating. You know what I mean? It's not.
Mm,
Don't have to have gay coffee, gay tea, or all these other things. It's me, and for me, it's a slice of my pie, a beautiful slice that sometimes does impact my lens and all the things that I participate in life. Um, I got to. This is a random story. I don't know why I'm sharing it or why it's popping in my head. But for one of my birthdays, I got to do a City Slickers experience. I don't know if you ever watched City Slickers with Billy
uh-huh.
Crystal. Fabulous, either 80s or 90s movie. We're dating
Uh,
ourselves now.
Yeah, I think it's 90s, early
Yeah,
90s, maybe late 80s. You're right. Oh my
but
gosh.
I went on a cattle drive in Montana by myself. I was just like something I have no idea why. I just got this wild hair and I need to do this. So I went in this remote Big Rock out by my Wyoming, Montana, and I sat around a campfire with people from all over the world, from Sweden and Denmark, and uh, this campfire of like cowboys and cowgirls who were like, who's the queer one? And I'm just me with my cowboy hat and boots and getting to tell these people my story of being in ministry and that I'm an out gay man living in LA pursuing storytelling and film. And they're like, that's neat. And then we saddle up and go riding through the woods and the hills, driving some cows. Just that's just kind of beautiful to me that my tiny little story got to go to somewhere Montana to then when everybody flew home, like I met this little weirdo with a beard who's this little gay guy who used to be a pastor, and our stories get to impact people. And you and Tori's story of being a straight married couple, who I used to, be heavily in your ex-wife's life. Just this, how beautiful the
Yeah.
unfolding of that story as you two continue on in such just rad ministry and the lives that you're touching of your foundations and backstory with it all.
Yeah, it's been good, man. It's been really good. And you're not wrong, right? Like, uh, I think any journey in our it all parallels. Unfortunately, like in our culture, it is what it is. It's not as bad as some other cultures, especially for queer folks. It's not great here all the time. Sometimes it's incredibly traumatic, like you said. But we all have these shared experiences of growth, spurts and of growth and defeat. I don't even know if that's the right word, but so my so while I'm thinking about yours, and just how it all unfolded, what was that point for you when you recognized, because you talked about that slice of the pie, right? What was it? Or maybe it was an awakening or over time, but was there a moment when you realized, oh wait, this slice deserves to be part of the whole pie though too? Of like it, you recognize it's there, but then when was it that it was like, oh no, no, no. I can't keep moving forward without this piece too.
Right. There's this phrase, and I'm 10 years into recovery. I'm over 10 years sober at this point. Um, and in in AA, NA, and then SLAA, sex and love addictions type stuff, all these like various areas of recovery, a phrase is a lot of people for the rock bottom or the point of change. It's when the pain of remaining the same or the pain of changing was less than the pain of staying the same. So the pain of doing the same thing all the time, being stuck in the same cycle, is far worse and greater and more deadly than the pain of change. That is when. Um, and this is it's so personal and gets people locked in the throat and in the heart because it has to do with love. It has to do with our hands interlaced with another hand. And I think it's that recognition in my 20s of like getting to see all these other couples my age, especially, from the Bible college days. Like, do you get a wife yet? You married? You dating for 2 months? You're married. All this happy bliss of these couples moving on in matrimony and joy of starting a family and recognition of when's it my turn? When do I get to? And then really deep down knowing I want that's not the hand I want to hold, and that I've never held the hand that I want to hold. Because I'm too afraid to, with good reason. Um, and then really reminding yourself that you deserve love, that you want it. Um, so I was there, and I think I was knowing I had to sacrifice my ministry to be able to have that. I started taking secret tiptoes into those realms in all the wrong ways, right? And then that brings a whole nother layer of pain, a different pain. But I stopped after doing some of this, and I just um, I don't remember. I was in a parking lot of Ralph's or Vaughn's or some grocery store, and just constantly churning through all this in my head as I watched life move on around me, and me feeling like I'm missing out on love that I want, a relationship that I want, and that I was feeling God wants for me. And so, yet it was this tussle because I believe so thoroughly and so strongly God does not want that for me. And so, just to grip the wheel and pray, God, the basic fundamental question are you going to send me to hell if I'm in love with a guy? And just holding in that silence until the answer came of like, no, my child. I'm wild about you. I love you. I want you to have a beautiful, fruitful life and experience, heightened friendship and love and intimacy. Um, and there, instead of you seeing this as such a curse, seeing as it just the gift of who I am, of me. And many more moments of that, wrestling through nights without sleep and prayer and like tossing and turning with the sheets, like yeah. So ripping off the covers one night, just went and Googled gay Christian and found that, and went on the gaychristian.net. It was this broken down platform of a website with this awful like posting board. I think anybody listening who used to be a part of that will remember how just dated the forum was, but still so cool. Where very private, very screen namey, that people in the middle of relationships or church positions could safely come in and have a space to unpack all of this and talk about this and find other people online being like, oh my gosh, me too. I'm Baptist, or I'm in the minister, or I do this. It's just like, it was such a revelation of like, there's a whole tribe of us out there needing to have a table to sit at together to talk through all of this and find commonality and peace and resolve in all of it that I was able to find. And then I would talk to, some mentors around me and listen to their stories until it just like, it just, you can't take it anymore. The lid blows off and it pops. And it's just like, I am gay! Or I'm gay! You sing it, you shout it, whatever it is. It's usually um, with a bang. And some people just maybe a simple little I'm gay. But when it does, it's never without a long building of unfolding because there's stakes involved with it. There's risk, um, and especially in our climate today,
Mm.
continually, that conversations like this have to be had. And for so many people out there who are like, my God, do we need another gay character on a television show, or do we need another podcast? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because uh, every different ethnicity, religious belief, various stories, someone struggling with suicide or depression or an illness, eventually someone's going to hear those relatable things of like, that's my story, that we all get to share in and not feel alone when we hear that, to give us the strength, to give us the courage to stand up and be who we are. So it was that kind of thing for me. And then eventually, getting into dating and relationships, that it's like this whole new world of joy in the journey of uh, dating. And I remember, having my first boyfriend essentially, and it was just like I felt like prayers were being answered in my life. That I would be sitting in moments and driving and so sentimental of sharing things verbally that I would just cry all the time. He's like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just I'm too of finally getting to experience something you think you probably longed for and wanted for a long, long time, and then being able to, as I aged, become that example for other young versions of me to to say it's possible, kiddo. It's possible to have happiness and pursue what you want to do with who you want to do it with.
So as you're going through all of that, um, experiencing these things for, first time, second time, third time, whatever. Um, how does that, I'm just thinking about little Brent or teenage Brent, Bible college Brent, right? Or um, ministry team Brent. What were those things called that we did? Where
Life
you
means
life ministry teams, that's it. Oh my gosh. But I'm thinking about that Brent and all that Brent had to suppress or hide, and then all of the harm that comes from that. And I'm just thinking about on the other side of that, all of this joy and how light brings healing. Could you feel that? Like could you feel actively feel like that healing of like this is out and there's 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 no fear of exposure anymore because I'm healing this as I'm could you feel those kinds of things taking place while in the moment? Did you recognize that or was that later?
yes and
Mm-hmm.
um, sometimes it's not without complete retrospect where we get to a certain point in our lives where you are as a parent now. Your daughter's in what year of college?
She's 22, so she's actually not in school right now, but yeah, 22.
Of that similar age, and we think of our parents at that time frame like they don't get me, they don't understand, and all these things or whatever we had to go through growing up. That it's only sometimes with this age that I'm at. I'm like, man, what were my parents going through at 30? Because I now I can look back and like, I cannot believe I was 30 a few months ago. But you know what I mean? It gives you
Yep.
ability to step into their shoes and have more grace and have more perspective on sometimes our parents were doing the best that they could.
Hmm.
They're doing what they thought was right. They were living into what they believed wholeheartedly was love. And it gives a little bit more empathy for even some of the things that hurt and weren't maybe the best, parenting choices or whatever for so many people. Um, but yeah, the the both because I mean I was full of joy in in ministry and pursuing the things that we were. And yet there was a whole side of me that was unknown.
Hmm.
And just to think that you have to veil a whole portion of you that's not known to someone and hide that part, don't show people that part. It's like it's I don't know, the like a petri dish, or it's like the growing area of shame, of embarrassment. It just starts the root of that and gets, let's grow this embarrassment and shame in your life on this, that you hold on to it until you have to completely shed and strip away shame. I think is one of the most awful things that we lived with, that can seep its way into so many aspects of us, in our careers, in our dreams, in our daily habits, uh, in our relationships, in the way we do love, into our intimacies. Shame in our lives is one of the most damaging things that I think we live with. And
Mm.
so, living with this form of shame that I had to stay in hiding and I cannot let that part of me be known, absolutely, it formed this kind of duality thing that I had to know. I knew who I was for the longest time, which I think most, LGBTQ people you've talked to do know, and from usually a very younger age. But the healing continues, and I think it continues for you as well. Sometimes if you've been to therapy, there's things that are said that it's just like this epiphany of like, oh, that's why I'm still doing this. That's why
Hmm.
I'm still reacting this way in conflict. That's why I get so tense or my anxiety takes over. It's because when I was 5-year-old Joe, this was said to me, or this didn't show up to me when I was scared, or when I was hurt, or what I was told what a man does. What, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Um, and I think the strength of the LGBTQ community to continually step up with pride. So it's not this boastful, in your face type thing that I think is the intention. It's just that I'm not going to negotiate who I
Mm.
am with you. We are not going to have this conflict about who I am. You're not going to tell me about who I am. I don't argue that. I am who I am. And that is the pride. But that we have to continually stand in in the strength of that, in the reminder of that, because we're told, no, you're not. On and on of like, dude, believe me, I am. It is, and it's not a choice. I recently saw something on TikTok. I think it's what the kids are doing these days. Uh, there was there was this guy who just randomly, and I think it's such a beautiful platform where people are sharing their news so vulnerably. You know what I mean? People are getting kind of inside scoop to a plethora of life perspectives. And this older gay man was just like, if reparative therapy worked, I think I might do it. And I was just like, oh man, that hurts.
Hmm.
That hurts to hear another gay man around my age say that, because still the pain of family or friends, social people around you who waver on accepting him. loving him, letting him be himself, to take away whatever other frustrations are layered in to this unique difference about us. Um, at the end of the day, that it's just like it's no big deal. Does it matter if me, your neighbor, it's Jim and Rick together in there living their life and mowing their lawn and doing their things, or if it's Bill and Tammy? Like, how does that affect you? It doesn't. So let people live, let people love, and yet um, there's this incredible need for people to throw their mostly harmful, painful opinions. I don't know. I just have to let it be known. No, you don't. There's so many other things you can be doing as a Christian follower, as a Christian faithful believer, that I think is the calling of your Savior, of your gospel, that is not telling people what you think about their love or how they carry out expressions of friendship and care and parenting. Um, so there's still that kind of healing going on.
Mhm.
I think I'm taking too long answering the question now. I think
No, no. Obviously, I don't think that you're wrong. And thinking about how people, you mentioned it, how people act out of their wounds, right? Like we're handed these wounds and then we act out of those things. And I think one of the biggest wounds that, from our shared experience would be the wounds that the church handed to us about how we are broken and wrong and all of those things and how shame does grow in those places that we're given. And then those places are called God. And there's this, I had to pull it up because there's this great quote from Christian mystic Richard Rohr from his book Falling Upward. And I posted about it because it so resonates with me and it has everything to do with what you're talking about. And he says, once we have faced our own hidden or denied self, there is not much to be anxious about anymore because there is no fear of exposure. We're no longer afraid to be seen by ourselves or others. The game is over and we are free. We finally are who we are and can be who we are without disguise or fear. And and I think if so many of us, whether it's straight or queer or whatever, if we went on that own journey of healing, of like discovering those parts and learning how to integrate those or embrace those in a healthy way, I I think a lot of the things that we face and a lot of the things that are thrown at queer people, um, I don't think they'd be there. I don't think they'd be there.
I think you're very right. Um, Even that notion, it's just LGBTQ stuff aside. There's so many things
Hmm.
that we don't talk about. We're told we're not supposed to talk about them. Um, and I think that's so dangerous and so detrimental to growth. To it's being able to have conversations like this, and the many places of conversation I found in with my friends are so beautiful. Where we just show our scars, we just reveal our fears, we tell on ourselves, we acknowledge, and especially for me too, in the rooms that have usually been secret and protected, because in those places of Alcoholics Anonymous, with other addicts addicted to these things and not knowing why they keep doing something they're doing without knowing it's usually rooted in so many of these places of love and connection and things that uh, lead to bad coping skills and mechanisms for protection. And ultimately, anyone in addiction, whether it's food or alcohol, when we're coping, we're just trying to love ourselves well, is the ultimate boiling down of why we do what we do repeatedly that we don't want to do. All you're trying to do and all you're trying to do is love yourself. But there's so many better ways to do so, and I think one of the best ways is in that sharing, in that vulnerable exposure with safe people who are ready to do the same with you and listen and care for you and receive and share the same. Um, that you find healing, that you find humanity. And I think one of the biggest places where I found God that I was not used to looking before was just simply in humanity.
Mm.
And when you have a traffic incident, you have to come home and tell your wife, like, God, I rolled my freaking window down and I ripped this guy's head off and I feel awful about it. Or that's not me. That's not who I want to be. I just
Mhm.
got upset because dot dot dot, and you get to unpack that stuff as a real um, human who's both full of grace and patience and love, and also can flip the bird when he's
Yeah.
upset. In conflict, when you choose the wrong response uh, with someone you love, and
Yeah.
you love them, but in the
Yeah.
moment, you pretty
Yeah,
hurtful.
we went to a conference a few weeks ago at the time of this recording. It's the 29th of April, and it's called the Post Evangelical Collective. And on one of the sessions, I recognized that one of the things that I had been doing was perpetuating wounds handed to me, to continue to use that phrase, and and that the only way that that wasn't going to continue was I had to address the root causes of those things. And so, like, I would react in certain ways because that's how I saw the reaction was supposed to be. And that reaction took place because of something that has, predated me by decades, and yet I was still perpetuating that kind of behavior because that's what I had seen. And for good, bad, or the other. Um, and recognizing that, I mean, I even talked about it in our little community down here, was that, it wasn't their doubts about themselves, talking about my kids, that was drowning them. It was my doubts about me that I was then putting on them. And because I was seeing things in them that were part of me, and I was trying to fix it in them instead of addressing it in me, if that makes sense. And it just, I just had this realization, um for whatever reason, the tumblers clicked together, and I thought to myself, so many of us are acting out of the same things. And I think that's why, not to just narrow in on LGBTQ issues, but I honestly believe that's why there is such fervor from that right wing, from that fundamentalism against LGBTQ. And I think it's specifically because so many people in the queer community have had to do that shadow work just to take the next breath, that they've had to do that healing, right? And embracing all of their humanity to just move forward, which I think is what salvation is. I think it threatens the rest of us that were taught, no, that's not, like, that salvation doesn't happen here. It's not about your body, it's not about your personality, it's about what comes next. Like, we're leaving all of this behind because all of this, including our bodies, are wrong. So we're disembodied from all these things. And I recognize that so many of my queer friends are very embodied because they've had to do the work, they've had to do the healing, and they live that way, and it threatens that system. I think that's a root cause of why that's not addressed. I don't think it's talked about, but I really do. I think that's a root cause of what's happening.
Yeah. And how does that feel, Joe? How does it feel to express what you just did? Of like seeing with your kids that it was me. What does it feel like?
Well, it's freeing, because, like, I understand it now, and going to therapy for that. It felt good to tell my kids that, and it changed the relationship, like that, especially with this story. This podcast is not about me, um, but it changed the relationship with my son because he and I are just so much alike, and so to apologize to him and just say, listen, buddy, uh, these things that I harp on you about are about me. It's not you, and I need you to be who you're going to be. Was that car ride, that was really cool to share with him. And I know, he's 14, and so I've got some time to make up for it. But yeah, yeah, it was good. It was really good.
It's a car ride he'll never forget.
Yeah, me either. Yeah.
And I think like to express this to you, like you having the strength and ability to almost make that apology to him, and to even it's okay for dads to apologize to their sons, parents to apologize to their kids. We're all just out here doing our best.
Hmm.
Even like the apologies you have continually made to the LGBTQ community for harm you feel like you may have done. I hope you've been able to hear from so many other people, you're forgiven. We forgive you. You were doing the best you could all those years because you believed so thoroughly what love was, that you were living out such a core belief of, I think this is truly what love is. You were doing the best with what you had at the time.
Yeah, and I think too that that's part of that healing process, right? Is learning to hold your past self with some grace, because I mean, without notwithstanding that there are some rare exceptions of people who are just they're going to be assholes and they're always going to be assholes, but for most of us, you're not wrong. You're just doing the best that you can, and hopefully, when you know better, you do better, and then holding that past self with some grace
Yeah.
that you would for somebody else.
The urgency in this message is Daniel Carlslake is another profound filmmaker, documentary maker. He's the one who made "For the Bible Tells Me So," and
Mm-hmm.
Not What They Do. And those stories get to unpack so many various lives through so much of this. And there was a particular family, and got to meet them at a screening here in LA, of parents whose son came out. And I think under the following their pastor's direction and lead, they followed the scripture and that interpretation of it to put the immoral brother outside of it, whatever that, I can't recall
Oh
what it is.
yeah.
If you put them outside the home, they will come back to you type full on belief on that. And unfortunately, that didn't work out how they wanted it to. And he didn't come home at all. Is no longer with us, and no longer with them. And to hear the mom got up there and shared afterward words to the audience of just like a documentary like this and a story like this getting told, our story getting laid on the carpet and exposed here, where we look like the villain in the story because the part we may have played in all of this with our son, choosing um, that path, I will live with every day and work to forgive myself. And I would do anything to have him back, to tell him I love you just as you are. There's the urgency to tell other people woohoo, who who still have their beautiful children to not go that path, to not lose any more of us with things that are there's depression, there's anxiety, there's things out there, and it's ultimately each person's journey with their own mental health and stuff. But we are heavily impacted by one another, especially with our immediate family and friends and church communities who become like family. And
Mm.
when that family says to you, you don't belong here anymore, or you don't get to stay here as is with this particular thing, um, that's life altering. And I think the message of what you're doing with your podcast, it has that kind of impactful reach to continue to reach people who might be listening to some of this in secret, in private, in their cars or on their commutes to work, to try to discover more of this because they know their children are LGBTQ, and to find a different way to talk about it with them, to play the tape through. And man, give me the scaled back grand scheme of this thing, and that is I would never want to lose my child that
Yeah.
way, based on my unwillingness to love them, care for them, even through something I do not understand. You'll get there in the understanding. Just make sure to show up in love and care so that that kind of damage isn't done.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's heavy. And that's true, right? I mean, and I can't imagine the well, look, thinking about it as a parent, I, I guess there has to be some sort of meaning from a tragedy like that, right? Like, and I love the fact that they are strong enough vulnerable enough to just, like you said, lay it out. Here's the story. please, for the love of God, do not repeat our mistakes, because I would go back, I would give anything, you know, and just to be for other parents to be able to see that example, for other friends and family members and church people to see that example and just be like, yeah, you know what? This isn't the way we're going. This isn't right. This is not okay. It's
Yeah.
just not okay.
The the you we're sitting here talking about, who is now you're leading the way for so many other people who are starting to just do better, to have ears to listen and a heart to open to something other, something different than what we've been taught or listened to for so long. Um, you know, like you and Tori said, like you know that I loved God. You know that I truly had a genuine relationship and connection. That it's like, wait a minute, this don't make no sense. I'm trying to that if you could go back and like tell yourself something from the perspective you're sitting now in today, what would that be?
What would I
All
tell
the
myself?
uh, and all the 50 interviews you've done and so much connection you've done with so many members of the LGBTQ.
Oh, I would say I think um oh man, that's a really good question. I think if I could go back and talk to my younger self, knowing where I was, mentally, I think I would tell myself, uh, don't be afraid to ask better questions. Because if I think back, I had questions, that I had questions. I think I was just afraid to really pursue them, and I was afraid to ask them. And I think I would go back and be like, no, you need start asking now.
Yeah,
Because the seeds of those questions were there 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. Um, and I just I don't know if I had the courage or the strength or whatever to continue to pursue them. And then once you get into, fundamentalist Bible college, those questions are kind of beaten out of you. But I think if I had just, kept asking, started asking those questions, it would have made a difference. I would have gotten to where I am now quicker.
yeah.
So, no, that's a good
It's funny to
question.
think about this. I heard this. I don't remember where, but the you right here, right now, you are currently who you needed as a child.
Mm.
You are the hero that you needed and wanted as a kid.
Isn't that awesome to think about? Hopefully that's the truth
Yeah,
for people listening.
yeah. And the same for us. Like
Yeah.
I'm sitting, our pre-conversation about my life and where I'm going, what I'm doing. I'm chasing my dreams and I'm
Yeah.
working to turn them into reality. And it's never too late. It's I've arrived when I've arrived, and I'm still chasing it. And I don't know, a little kid who dreamed of filmmaking and being on a television screen or a movie screen, telling the right stories. I'm a hero to my younger self. Most days it doesn't feel like that. You know what I mean? We go through a lot of the hiccups and valleys, but overall, where we sit today and where we're going to be sitting in another 20 years from now, we're growing, we're moving, we're acknowledging fault, we're embracing newness, allowing ourselves to be transformed. And I think that's, you know, an ongoing transformation is truly what salvation is for me.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's a beautiful segue because I wanted to talk about that, about what you're doing now and how being able to embrace all of your humanity and all of the love and all the things that you have to give and how that's like playing itself out. So you just recently spent a few months in San Diego doing something really cool. I want to dive into that for a little while. What was it? Share it with us.
Yeah. It was some musical theater, and it was the story of a lesbian cartoonist, Alison Bechtel, and her story of growing up in rural Pennsylvania at the end of the 70s, early 80s, which is a beautiful time, full of very high socks, rotary phone dial, and just a beautiful time to be alive and grow up as a kid out on bikes when it's like, get out of the house and
Yeah.
go riding around till it's dark and come home. And uh, she had a very eclectic, artistic, intelligent family that was outliers in where they were. Um, but it's a story of growing up with kind of abusive dad, and I played that father. I played a dad who was pretty, verbally at least abusive to his wife and sometimes to his kids, and yet it was a fully nuanced story. But yet he had moments of being a wonderful dad that taught them so many things about art and history and reading and literature and um, well cultured. And yet, when Allison went to college, she finally came out and expressed that to her parents. And I think her dad, in many ways, was subtly, cheerleading her on with the books that he would send, and almost this message of like, fly away and do not come back here, keep going, for something he never found the strength or bravery to do on his own, and ultimately ended his own life. At the end of the story, I sing a ballad. It's like pretty much a suicide ballad where he jumped in front of a truck, and it's just like this. It was this gorgeous story. It's not like your classic. That's a fun musical, or fun cartoon strip. So a story that slipped into two genres of art that it's really cool to see. It's a haunting tale and painful tale, but stuff that needed to be talked about, because what family doesn't have sometimes some stuff is like, oh, that's scary to talk about what we experienced or felt or saw. And she was such a great storyteller. I was an incredible cast, and it was an honor to play that role. A very hard honor to play that role. Um, Becoming that, and yelling in a 10-year-old's face and telling her art sucked, or whatever it was, to singing songs about what I want in the parlor while my wife played piano while I was there with the landscaper. Like, just a really closeted man with layers of shame, and in doing that, it felt like ministry. It felt like full circle of, there will always be a notion of me who is a pastor, and I find new outlets these days to be able to do that, and that was for sure one of them. And then behind the scenes with the cast, to just get to love on those kids playing these complex roles and everybody in the production, and yeah, I I found a lot of satisfaction and hope in telling a story like that. It was really cool. And what else? Then I got to I got to come home and then be a part of this gay guardian angel type short series that I'm a part of, where these ex-boyfriends blow up at a barbecue. A barbecue grill explodes, and they end up in heaven together, and God sends them on these like quantum leap style type assignments to go fix these humans scenario, and they have to work together, and they're sparring with each other. And it's really cute to see like gay spirituality land with comedy in television show. So
So is that
yeah.
live theater? Is that something that's filmed and you can watch?
No, that last part is something that's going to be making the film festival circuit
Mm.
until it finds a landing place for distribution. It's really complex how all film, indie filmmaking and indie series have to get out there and go through hoops to get enough money and funding and placement for the public to see them, to recoup any form of cost, or get things out there. So yeah, and also, I think I shared this with you. I just decided to open my own production company to start making short films and telling stories, and obviously through my own lens with all the things in my life. It's always going to have a hint of faith and orientation type stuff with me, maybe. But the funny thing is that I felt this call to resurrect the Road Ministries, which was my ministry out of Bible college to do traveling drama ministry. And so my production company is called The New Road Productions. Um,
Ah, that's clever.
but but it feels full circle, because I there's a part of me who will never not want that back, never not want what I lost in that ministry of being in this ministry van, going from camps and conferences, sitting with kids, hearing their stories, singing the worship songs, uh, giving the testimonies, altar calls, and some of the sketches that I wrote that these days I would just like go with the messaging. But uh, what I felt during those years, I've always wanted to reclaim and get back to. And this is giving me I don't know, this way to do so many years later. So it feels very full circle.
Yeah, that resonates with me. That resonates with me because there is a part, and I think you mentioned it earlier, like toward the beginning about like this mourning process of what was or what could have been or what you thought things were going to be, and it's not unlike that whole spiritual journey where you start in one place and you do like there are moments of real beauty and moments of connection and things that we shared together sitting around a campfire, at one of the retreats, and you look back on those things and eventually, like I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I can look back on those things fondly now and hold them for what they were and what they needed to be at the time. And I'm thankful for those things. And because they all of those things informed who I am today and how I see the world today. And I like who I am today.
Yeah.
And I like where I'm going and who I'm becoming. Um, but so much of that you want to just like because it is painful because there is things that are painful that are wrapped up and you just want to push those aside and you don't want to deal with it. um so the idea of like resurrection, new life, reclaiming some of those, like you said, the road ministries, and now it's the New Road Productions, and taking those things that had this beautiful root and grew into something that I don't want to say harmful, but was part of pain, but then
Yeah.
being able to take it and squeeze every ounce of good from it now. There's just something really beautiful about it.
Yeah. And though of course I no longer subscribe to that
Right.
doctrine, no longer am under the umbrella of that theology. I'm not a traitor to my truth because I still like to listen to some Hillsong music. Like I sometimes those 90s worship songs will come on and it lights me up because I still get to hold that part of myself and admit openly like I don't know, there's something about it that I can still listen to it, and sometimes though it triggers me like ugh, um there's other times I need those songs again. I need those memories to
Mm.
remember that is my story. And I felt God there. I felt love and I felt peace. And I love sometimes how, ah, you know, this is for me, but, sometimes you'll take a break of like your prayer life or seeking God or what is all of this type faith seeking. And then you just round a corner and it's like there's this sneak attack from God. And he's like, gotcha. And you're like, there you are. Where he says, I brought this, like a little just treat from decades ago to say, remember that? And it's like, I do. And you remember that. And you've turned
Mhm.
it into something whole and beautiful and healing, um, that you've never let go of me. You've never given up on us, of our relationship, of your desire and want to be with me. And yeah, give us this good thing called life and love and friendship and sometimes the great mystery of what all of this is.
It's funny. It's funny that you literally said what you just said because on our way home from that conference, during the conference, that post evangelical collective, they they did some work with grief and healing from past whatever. They did this thing called a refrocking ceremony for pastors that had lost denomination or credentials, and they called us up on stage and they go through this whole thing. So it was about reclaiming a lot of things, and they sang a few older songs that I haven't sang in a long, long time because it's just like oh my gosh, that's hilarious. If you were if you're watching this, like if you're just listening to this, you need to go back to the YouTube and watch this because if you are a 90s youth group kid, bam, that's a core memory.
The
Um,
ASL I just delivered.
yeah, you did too. Um, but they sang some songs that I haven't sang in like, oh my gosh, I literally can't remember. And so on the way home, we got into this like 90s youth group playlist and started listening to all these old songs and stuff. And uh I found I haven't listened to it in a long time. I'm sure you're aware of Derek Webb's journey from
Oh yeah,
Caveman's Call,
yeah.
and his I listened to his album from last year, the Jesus um what hypothesis, the Jesus hypothesis, and he's got this new it it all matter tour where they've got the bus too. And if you're a '90s church kid, you know what I'm talking about, the bus. So I went back and I listened to that, like, I don't know if it's the first or second album of Caedmon's Call,
Mhm.
and it's just a flood of memories,
Yeah,
and it was just so good. And some of the lyrics, like if I were a lyricist, I think I would change a few of the words. But so many of
yeah.
those songs, it was just like, you know what? The seeds of what I am now are in those lyrics. And it's like if you could step back and just like, of course you're where you're at, Derek. Did you not hear what you sang? But it was just like reclaiming, like you mentioned that, and going back, and it was just so healing to listen to those words again and be able to roll down the windows and belt out those songs like
That's
I did, at 18, 19 years old. And yeah.
funny. Tori and I were driving one time back to the country roads of Missouri, and I think we'd had a fight, and so we're just driving in silence. And I think a Caveman's Call song came on of Center Isle, and we're both just like, and then over the gravel so dramatically, and like, I'm sorry, and she's like, I'm sorry too, and we just, so Caveman's Call healed our little road, yeah, just all of the country roads, listening to that music, all through the streets of Joplin, like Jennifer Knapp and
Yes.
Caedmon's Call. And to think where both of them are now,
Yes.
uh, and Amy, even like Amy Grant celebrating
Yes.
her niece's lesbian wedding. It's just like it's only one relationship away of every single person who knows someone they love who is like, hey, that's my story, and that it forces almost everybody to come to the table and talk about it. Yeah, man, Caedmon's calls are awesome.
Right. I know. It was really good. It was really, really good. Just that idea, and jumping back into it, and like you said, it's coming full circle. And I think that's what healing's all about, right? Is being able to take those things that
he Derek Webb was leading worship at one of the first gay Christian conferences I went to in Nashville, I
mm,
think 2010. And when he got up to lead worship one night, I think I remember one of the most powerful and impactful moments of worship I've ever had. And I've had many, but it was the first time, I think, that I stood in a room full of other gay people. And I had the epiphany that, oh, wow, every single person next to me knows exactly what it is like. And we stood on like the most holy ground together and held hands in worship, and it was just like it's so important for people to continually do what the founders of Gay Christian Net did, and now it's in other hands, and for you're doing in the relay race that it is, to pass that baton forward, because man, I will never forget the powerful impact that had on me, to for another continual reminder, I belong here. I have space to worship here. I have space and a place to tell my story where love can move through me and make a difference in someone else's life. Don't give up.
yeah, isn't that powerful? Just being in a room where you're seen. Like, nope, you're here, and we're glad you're here. All of you. All of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Brent, I want to honor your time.
Oh, it's
I know.
tearing
What's
up and
Yeah. What's next for Brent Roberts? What's on the docket? What are you doing next?
well, I'm still selling real estate as I have for a long time. I've got a real estate brokerage
Yeah.
that sell residential houses, but man, I cannot deny how much I love storytelling, and it's why I'm in LA. Because this is just like the hub of the globe to get stories made, and it is a wild world, wild west out here, and I'm working to weave my way in and tell mine. So with my production company, starting to tell small short stories that matter to get into full length feature films about various things. I'm working on a documentary potentially with a guy who's around our age who has Alzheimer's and finding hope in his story. So I'm open to that. Many other story ideas, but one of the most profound ones for me is my story of Ship Faced when I
Mm.
was a director, and in a way, kind of running from who I was still like you said, the journey of it all. That I'm like, oh, here's a new space, and tapped into some of my nature out there at sea, and while it's still under the grip of addiction, chaotic, wild, fun, extravagant, traveling the world. Um, Again, finding that place of like it was very pastoral, being the host as the face and voice of a luxury cruise line. Just ridiculous things that happened out there at sea, and that's what my own podcast is kind of about, that a little bit, an alias telling some of these behind the scenes stories.
Yes, and some of
And
those are kind of wild.
they are.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so the rating, please. But very human and beautiful, and finding God out there. So it's like this Jonah story of trying to run, and that whale spit me up, and I got fired from that cruise line, and that's how I landed in rehab and started my sobriety journey. Um, but the television show that I'm developing and writing is kind of all about that, where I believe what my first season will be is this fallen youth purity pastor out there at sea reclaiming his purpose, and he's doing well, almost locking in the full-time position in his trial run until a gay cruise and a Christian cruise both end up on the same voyage, and he has to face everything he's been running from on land, or go overboard, or burn that ship to the bottom of the sea type adventure to find nuance in both of these community groups, where you're typically I'm this and I'm this. No, we're going to find some unique storylines in both of those groups to find some humanity and hilarity, um, to hopefully find salvation at sea for this character and many other characters in the series. So it's like the Love Boat on Molly and Crazy Tale, but I always want to let the stories that land on board bring us some form of faith or connection to God. Because man, out there at sea, I felt so tied. I would always look out over the black water, or the moon cascading down, or the places we go to just find God out there, and it called to me. So that's the biggest thing I've got going. And then I've got a feature film I'm writing with it's like a thriller with a gay real estate couple. That I don't know. So I've got a bunch of stories in development in the works. So if anybody's listening who have got some money and you want to help fund these things or get behind the story in any way, don't you hesitate to reach out and help me get there. Help me tell some of these stories. Because as I was listening to your story with Rocky, your interview, and just how
Mm.
much it takes so much money,
It
because it
does.
takes so many people. If you sit afterwards in a movie before getting up as soon as the screen goes black, if you wait and you watch all the credits and think about every person on that giant credits list getting fed for the day of work, that's a lot of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Or the various components and phases of pre-production, to the shoot dates, to the editing and post coloring, and just it is miraculous that any movie ever gets made. And so it's I'm in love with it. I'm in love with watching people come together with so many different things that they bring to storytelling to make it happen collectively as a group of filmmakers, that we all get to sit in the theater afterwards and be like, yeah, we did that. It's not about the main actor. It's not about the director. It's not about the right. It is about every single person, like, who contributed, including the people who was like, man, I love that story. I'll write a check for that, type stuff, to get so many of these stories out there. And that's what I love about 1946 as
Mm.
well, how powerful of an impact that's having, and is going to continue to have as it's
Story.
translated in various languages. And
Yeah.
um, is the same with what I mentioned with Daniel Karlslick's films and so many others that I don't have time to go into. But that is a very long answer, per usual, of what I'm up to.
No,
And
that's awesome. Yeah,
look
and
at
we'll put your contact information in the show notes for sure, and link that ship faced uh season that you've got out, which is hilarious, by the way. I listened to that and it was
Dude, I've got season two. I've got 10 plus episodes in the can. I just need to edit and get out there. So I've just got a lot of things going that I need to devote the time and attention to.
a lot of
But
juggling. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's the juggle. And like, still single, looking for love? Absolutely not on those dating apps. Screw that. Um, but just going in my direction and waiting, happily single, and not giving up that beautiful freedom until I find the right match and click. You
Good
know?
for you. Good for
Yeah.
you. That's awesome.
Got a
Brent,
plant,
it's
watering it.
I love you. Um, I thank you for spending so much time talking about all the things. I mean, it was just this, I didn't I said ahead of time that I didn't have like, I wanted to talk about like what's next or what's after. We usually spend so much time talking about what happened
Right.
and then where do you go from there versus like what's happening or what's going to happen. And so it was just like a meandering stroll through all the things, and I very much enjoyed it. I'm excited for people to hear it, and thank you for being part of our story here and what you're doing there. It's just so beautiful, and I'm thankful. I'm grateful to know people like you. So keep it up, and I love you.
I love you, friend, and ever and always, I'm so proud of you too, and what you're doing continually. Just the simplicity of showing up and loving yourselves well, loving each other well, your kids, and then letting that overflow to everybody else. I'm very proud to know you.
Well, thank you, brother. Thank you. Well, everybody, it was a beautiful episode of Shift Happens, and click those show notes. Um, if anybody's listening and you have connections or you want to invest in filmmaking, reach out to Brent. It'll be in the show notes, and click that link to go listen to Shipfaced, which is a fantastic title, by the way. So yes, well done. Yeah, that was a just a beautiful episode of Shift Happens, number 50. Thank you again for taking the time to share and talk with us, Brent. It means a lot to me, so thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I hope that you are having a wonderfully beautiful day. Now get out of here. Go love on some people.